In the book I Remember Balanchine, when you write that you were horrified when Balanchine first started to do Swan Lake.
Yes.
I don't want to embarrass you, but you wrote that sort of one of the questions that you thought was like, how can he do this to Swan Lake?
Exactly.
And
after my years of ballet russe.
Yes. But they had done a one-act version.
Oh, a one-act
yes,
version.
but so I was just wondering what the difference was and what you...
Oh,
I
yes,
mean,
because he had the swans, we did very little in the ballet russe version. There was a lot of standing on the side and while the principals were dancing. But right away in the waltz, we all knew that we would do this sauté pas de chat across the stage, and Mr. Balanchine started doing it in all kinds of different formations, and it wasn't what we were used to, and we weren't doing the, the usual one. So, Yvonne Mounsey and I were the old hands that had done the old ballet russe one-act version, and we thought sacrilege to
mess with the formations, the old Swan formations.
Yeah,
you changed your mind.
We did. We both definitely changed our minds.
I know that Tallchief in her autobiography said that Spizitsova was basically his ideal Swan Queen.
Oh yes,
and he had done a one-act version for Diaghilev in the late 20s for Spizitsova. I read that somewhere.
Yes.
And basically one of the things he did was delete a lot of the mime. So he was used to deleting the mime.
Well, and when I finally did the Swan Queen, the leading role, he usually didn't tell me very much about anything. He just gave me the steps and where I had to be and whatever I did. But with Swan Lake, he really, especially in the very first entrance, the running, he said, now Spizitsova ran there and it was so exciting, and he had me running and stop at arabesque and then running the other side and then being caught, and he definitely, she was his ideal.
Do you remember sort of what else he talked about her doing, or what the effect of her was?
Well, it was certainly in that first entrance, it was greatly the excitement of her version of trying to get away and then being caught and still being very nervous about being caught. And that had to go throughout that first entrance until the end of that.
Do you remember him ever saying anything about the old Imperial Ballet version, the Ivanov or the Pas de Pas?
No.
Never?
No.
Because I know he sort of credited Ivanov with a lot of the...
But he didn't,
he never talked about it.
He got down to it and he did what he wanted to do, or maybe it was as close to Ivanov, but I...
Never said anything.
He never said it. No.
Do you think that he thought Odette was more of a woman or more of a swan?
Well, certainly in that first entrance, she was definitely a swan that was fleeing. And then, no, I think she was human.
One of the things that I came across when I was looking up older reviews was a review of the opening night by Walter Terry, who said that obviously it didn't happen, but this was just the first act of a proposed full length. And he says, next autumn, an Act 2 will be added with the part of von Rothbard expanded and mimed by Balanchine himself, and Act 3 will be completed thereafter. you never heard anything about that?
No.
So,
there were too many other things going on. And
I just was wondering if there was any talk
no.
about that. Too bad. But
No, that the first big production that he ever did
Nutcracker.
was Nutcracker. It just wasn't. And I think probably, because everybody did Swan Lake, that he wasn't.
Well, from what I read and what I understand, it was really Morton Baum's idea that he wanted something that people would buy tickets for.
Yes, yes.
And Lincoln Kirsten said basically that
Oh,
he did
I'm
not
sure.
want to do it.
Yeah.
And that Baum was the one that put up the money for the Beaton costumes.
Yeah.
I remember Balanchine, you say your solo that we just saw was created in an hour. Is that what you remember?
Oh, yes. I mean, I don't remember exactly, but I mean, it was just very, very fast. Yes. I mean, it was, he knew exactly what he wanted to do, and as fast as I could do it, he would go on to the next bit, and it was just very, he had it on the tips of his fingers, and it was just up to me to do it, that was all. He wanted me flying.
One of the things that I noticed from reading the older reviews was the fact that basically that pas de trois was the one thing that people mentioned over and over again. It brought the house down. People were ecstatic about it. Basically, and one reviewer even says it was more exciting than the principals on opening night. Well, that's what he says.
Well, that was good.
But he dropped it in 1959. And do you know, and to give the Prince the music, I mean, he's had various solos. Do you know why he dropped it?
Well, I think, it was that he needed music for the Man's Variation, and that was, it was always took away from the principal's solo, if it was really well done, because it was that kind of a piece that could be an audience. The audience could realize that it was something difficult and hopefully airborne, and so it cut down on the importance of the principal's role.
So you think it was just sort of an aesthetic decision?
Yeah.
So who else did it besides you, do you know?
Carolyn George did it, I know, right after me, and I don't know who after that, how much longer they continued to do it after that. But she did it when I was in the company doing the principal role. Yeah. And of course, when I did the principal role the first time here at Lincoln Center, and he changed the variation.
Changed the role?
Completely.
For you?
And I was so upset.
Oh, because you learned the old one?
Yes, and it was something, he gave me something like Sylvia Pas de Deux variation.
Lots
and
of
I
fast
did
footwork.
it, and I did it. And then and he did a really good coda, really, when I did it, which I think they kept for quite a while afterwards. But then he let me go back to doing the usual ballerina solo.
Is there anything else you'd like specifically to say about Swan Lake?
About Swan Lake?
Yes.
No, I mean, then when I, it was, I think it's in the book, actually, but the first time, various people, after Maria was doing it, and then Diana and Tanny, and I understood he loved the length of Diana and Tanny and everything. And the first time I said, Mr. B, I'd never asked him to do anything. And I went and I said, you know, I'd really love to do Swan Lake, you know, Swan. And he said, well, you know, you alto and soprano. And, oh, all right. And then the next season, I didn't, you know, that was the end of it. I didn't ask anymore. Suddenly I was cast as Swan Queen. I didn't go to him and say, so now I'm a, my voice has changed. You know, but whatever.
So you said he spent a lot of time rehearsing you.
Yes.
Did he spend that same amount of time with all of the other Odettes?
Oh, my dear. Diana and Tanny, he worked with them incredibly. Yeah, every rehearsal and every rehearsal period, he was working with them, he had his ideas of what.
So even though he had
those
wanted to do Swan Lake,
bodies, and you know, I mean, I can understand, but he was really, really worked with them on just the feeling that he wanted for every port de bras, and very detailed.
So he did care about Swan Lake, though he didn't want to do it?
Yeah.
Want to talk about Caracole next, chronologically
All
at least. In Nancy Goldner's, one of her books, she's talking about Divertimento, and she talks a little bit about Caracole. She said it was choreographed in a week because a ballet had been planned to music by Richard Strauss, and it wasn't working out, and so he needed another ballet so that he had heard the music. So I just wondered if that's what you remembered, that it was done in a week.
Well, that wouldn't be surprising, you know, because he did, especially in something like that, if Jerry didn't like what he'd done in another ballet and threw up his hands and said, it can't go, Mr. B would immediately fill in, do something. So that's, I can well imagine that it was done. And he, you know, walk into the studio and the variation was already, you know, in his head.
I know, I mean, a lot of the writing about Caracole now sort of talks about it in relation to dressage or horses. The reviews that I read really didn't mention that idea. Walter Terry translated Caracole as zigzag, but was wondering if there was anything particularly horsey, other than the plumes, of course, or prancy about the dancing, or it was just...
I mean, you know, we weren't doing lots of pas de cheval or anything, which he gave me a lot of in other things, but I don't think I did one pas de cheval.
The thing that most people remember about Caracole is the costumes, and they're the Berard ones. So I was wondering if he only did it in a week, how much rehearsal you had with the plumes. Did that make a difference when you put them on and tried to move?
So.
It didn't?
No. It may have been, you know, a little awkward and in some of the formations, you know, whether we would be kneeling or something, but it didn't bother us. I did all kinds of turns and things, and I don't remember it ever bothering me.
With the head?
No.
You talked a lot about the gargouillades. And in either Joel's book or an interview, you said that you had never been given them in class, that was not something you learned in class. No. So how did Balanchine teach you this step? Did he say, I'm going to give you this, or were you just playing around? How did you learn them?
I may have had, because I was studying in Paris, I may have done it. So
with Preobrazhensky, right?
Yeah. Although, you know, it's not something that they would do. But, you know, she might very well have said, well, then, and here you could do gargouillade, it's possible. You know, But anyway, he would say, you know, it's like a pas de chat, except that you do jeté. The first leg does the rond de jambe en deux, or the second leg does the rond de jambe en dedans as you close in. So you get a mental picture. That's what I had to do.
And well, it's obviously
But
very
you-
difficult to
but
do.
that first leg has to stretch before, so it doesn't, it's got to start before it does the rond de jambe. It's got to do the dégagé. And that's, people think that you
start.
do it here. No, it's the stretch. And
Was your solo the only one that had them, or?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a specialty. And that's, you know, when he did the Nutcracker immediately.
In the the marzipan?
Yeah. So,
And square
it was
dance too,
kind
right?
of, it was kind of a wild one. I don't think, I mean, everybody does it now, but not many people were doing it then. It was a kind of a lost step that got brought back.
Chujoy, in his review, sort of mentions that each variation of Caracole was about an individual quality of each dancer.
I think so, yes, very definitely.
So I was just wondering if you were there when he was working on other solos, or were you? Do you remember him working with other dancers?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, and you know, Diana's the big long-legged développé and extension and showing long lines and that kind of thing. And Tanny had a lot of, you know, very, well, not big things, but very elegant kind of movements. Very much the way she moved naturally.
And you certainly, you did the Maria Tallchief solo
Yes,
later
Maria
on.
was fast and you know, precise.
Do you remember, like, the dancers, or you sort of giving any input when he was choreographing, what you could do, or was it just he knew you so well from class that he could give you whatever you could do?
He knew, and he knew what he would like you to work on. That was very definitely.
So what did he want you to work on?
You know, well, I mean, I was thinking of Tanny, you know, that she, it wasn't just big kicks or anything, but just a smaller movement, but very precise. And then she finished with very nice pirouettes and things. And, it was good for her, but it made her work on it as well. And that was the case with Diana too, with the big movements that she had to really show it, couldn't just throw it away.
You kept stressing that you had to sort of pause at the top and show. That was, he stressed that.
Yes, yes.
Even as something as fast as this one.
Oh yeah, and with the big movements of the long-legged girls, you know, he wanted them to show those movements very grandly. So that, you know, each position, with the getting to the position and then showing it and then going on to the next thing, you know, so that it wasn't just one movement to the next movement. No, one movement and then you know, so that you could take a picture of the end of each position. I mean, as the position was reached.
It was done in '52, and you said you did it a lot. And then in '56, when Divertimento premiered, a lot of times you say that everybody had forgotten what they had done in Caracole. I mean, you read that, and that Divertimento was a new ballet, but it doesn't really seem to be.
Oh, no, I don't think so. I mean, it was changed so
the
that
costumes
Allegra did
yeah.
my first
Yes.
variation.
Did he change the
and
choreography?
I did Maria's.
Did he change the choreography for Kent, or
For
Kent from yours?
No. And that
She
was
did the
it, you know,
gargoyles too?
that first, this step going around. Every time we had a rehearsal, he'd say, Pat, get with Allegra and make her.
So he had you work with her?
Yeah, you know, because.
Could she do the gargoyles?
Yeah, she could, but you know, it wasn't something that
You worked with
was
her on that,
easy.
or-
Yeah. Gargoyles and that very traveling step, yeah. And then I think the Diana and Tanny's variations were pretty much the same. And Melissa, I don't know which one did Melissa do. It was the pirouettes at the end, if I remember.
But pretty much it was the same ballet with just different costumes.
Yeah.
What did you like the other newer
and then
costumes?
all of those adagio sections.
Okay,
He kept changing those.
all that you
the-
said.
so-
You mentioned that
Yeah,
for the man.
so
You just
I don't
didn't.
know. You know,
What's-
everybody's was changed, and I remember he wanted Diana like to run and then like do something, and then she was caught afterwards. But she had to go ahead and do it. So there was excitement that he liked to create.
But the solos are pretty much Caracole.
Yeah, pretty much the same. And then the big dance of the corps was, I think, very much the same.
Well, it's certainly the same numbers.
Yeah.
So, did you like the new costumes?
Oh yeah, that was much better. Yeah, that was fun.
Well, I mean, the picture of your Caracole costume is really actually just beautiful.
Yeah.
Looks absolutely stunning.
I think it was, they were a little longer, maybe, the second last version. But it was, you know, if they're easy to move in, that's all. And you feel pretty. I mean,
I noticed when you were coaching, you kept stressing the upper body, the épaulement. And I know you've said that he would spend a lot of time in class doing arms.
Oh, and, you know, when we used to do this bar, go, and then we would get to the center and want to do, you know, some tendus or port-de-bras, and he would say, fifth position, and you do little breath and that little rest and through and come up and open and a breath down, not a big breath through the fingers, and then you come through and you do the port-de-bras, and then you here, and don't bring it down like this. Bring it down on the side of the wrist and through, and everybody's doing no.
Because you did sort of point out sometimes people look too flat, and he didn't want that.
No, I don't want it flat, but you know, it wasn't. Well, I think in the State Theater also, you know, all the movements got bigger because he realized the public was way out there. So, but the basic was not overdone. Now, sometimes it's, you know, very.
Well, you kept pointing
Right
that
now.
out, yeah, and it made such a difference.
And I think, you know, it still can be read from the far away if you do a movement without exaggerating it to such an extent. You know.
We can talk about the Scotch Symphony.
Oh, uh-huh.
If,
Symphony.
yeah. I know the City Ballet was in Edinburgh and to see the tattoo in 52. And, you know, that was, everybody has agreed that that was basically the inspiration for Scotch Symphony.
Absolutely.
Did he ever talk about Bournonville or La Sylphide at all?
Not to me, no, or not, you know, in the general rehearsals. I don't know that, you know, I don't think with Maria that he did, or Diana. No, I don't believe that he was, you know, they were their version of it. It wasn't anything to do with something that had been done before.
Because, well, I know Petipa did a La Sylphide too in the 1890s, and he would have seen that, I think, but he never talked about it at all.
No, no.
The Scottish Girl that you did is the only female in a kilt, which is a man's costume.
Yeah.
And was wondering if there might be sort of suggestions or hints of it being a travesty role. And the John Martin review, which talks about Scotch Symphony, which he quite liked, said for him it was not a 19th century ballet, but it was an abstraction of a 19th century ballet. But he does say of your brilliant solo, since the travesty was a regular practice of the period, one forgives her wearing a man's kilt. So was whether you were supposed to be Effie, or as somebody thought possibly an abstraction of Gurn, that was just, you just went out and did it.
Yeah, yeah, and had supposedly had fun doing it, and joined up with the boys and my two boys.
Did Balanchine ever talk about sort of 19th century conventions that he, because I know he said, or other people have noted that he thought the tossing the sylph was supposed to imitate that old flying. But
well, yeah, I mean that certainly is obvious, but it was you know, well done.
Yes. But it was obviously a nod to the 19th century, or to the idea of those old romantic ballets.
No, I don't think so. No, I think it was taking them
further
into our period, which is what he was all about anyway.